ワンピースは実在する。
俺はモンキー D ルフィ、お前らを超えて海賊王になる男だ。
人の夢は終わらねえ。
Welcome
to Nerdville.
We'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about chapter 1110 of One Piece. This will be a discussion video. We're going to talk about everything that happened in the chapter, including the new forms of the Gorosei. This is a continuation of the cliffhanger at the end of the last chapter with the Gorosei appearing on the scene, right? Being summoned. But first I wanted to take a look at the cover page because I found it interesting, right? What do you think, Turtles?
It's nice that we're changing the pace. We're gonna get a couple of cover stories that are gonna be like, it's gonna be interesting to see what the characters in Wano are up to, since we left them and we don't know what they're doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, we know that, Yamato wanted to tour around Wano because that's what Oden did, right? And that was kind of his excuse for wanting to stay behind and not joining the Straw Hats and staying around and helping, Wano. And we're seeing that happen right now, which is cool. And again, like we said, there's also the fact that we're not getting cover pages again. And before, the thing is, all the cover pages, they were cool, but it was kind of the same concept every single time, right? A character and an animal that's supposed to represent them, right? So here, just getting a cover story, getting back to that, right? It's pretty cool. I actually do enjoy following the cover stories and seeing what's happening, while we're in other places, as opposed to cutting to that directly like we do with, what's happening with Garp and all that, right?
I mean, I was just so excited about the chapter, I kind of skipped over it.
yeah.
So, let's get started on that chapter. I mean, the start is they're just showing us what's going on with the Marines going to try to intercept the ships from the Giants, and the pacifistas just continuing their assault on the Marine ships, leading us into, what we really want to see, which is all those, amazing forms for the Gorosei.
We know that, Saturn summoned them, right? And we see in the chapter later on, there's that ritualistic circle where he summoned them from, right? The chamber of the Gorosei. But you can actually see the lightning, descending from the sky, right? And that's what I find interesting. I don't know if it's emanating from the summoning circles, or if the circles are being formed after the lightning hits the ground. You know what I mean? Something like that. Because it does say black lightning fills the sky, not black lightning falls from the sky, So I'm just a bit curious about that.
I mean, if it's summoning circles, they should go into the sky.
Yeah, it comes from the ground, right? Yeah. From the underground,
Exactly, yeah, exactly. That's, devils, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe.
I mean, which form do you want to start with today? I mean, we've seen Saturn. I think everybody at this point has seen Saturn.
Yeah, and as expected and advertised by, many content creators, he's a Gyuki, an Ushi Oni. It was that seems to be, the inspiration for what Oda, and even in there's this little, info box which tells us what the appearance is, right? What the appearance is supposed to represent.
Oh, for sure. I mean, an arachnid makes a lot of sense as, something evil.
Yeah,
especially with the poison aspect that we saw after. I was more interested to see what the rest was, because so many theories were out there, and
obviously
it was kind of a bit, Oda again, kind of surprises everybody with maybe a little bit of unorthodox choices, and not like I think most people expected all yokais, but they're not all yokais when we looked into it on what they are. I mean, that's the most interesting part to me.
Yeah, and we discussed it, right, when we were after we read the chapter, that it was interesting that they weren't all yokais, because it seemed like if there was a connecting theme that wasn't, what we were expecting, right, the whole, seven princes thing, whatever, that there had to be a connecting tissue between those, devil fruits. And there is between some, right, the Yuki, the Itsumade, and the Bakotsu are all yokais, but the sandworm and the Hoki aren't, right? And like I said to you, I think when we were discussing this chapter, Oda could be, creating his own versions of yokais. Since we said in the, in our theory that it didn't really make sense that they were just yokais, because there are certain yokais that are, are illustrated as being very powerful, but not in the way that gods are supposed to be illustrated as, which the Gorosei think they are, right? They think they're gods, right? Or very superior to humans anyway, in any case. And using the yokais as a base, for the designs is probably what we think is what Oda's trying to do here, right?
For like, we thought that, but also that he went somewhere else. I mean, what I found interesting is that the head of agriculture is a sandworm, which is, destructive of the earth, and this takes the nutrients out of the earth. That's what they do. That's how they survive. It's fairly interesting, like it's just the irony of it, right?
Yeah, and that's what made us think that, made us think of the sins, right? Because it's directly opposing the branch of the government that they're in charge of. This does the same thing as well, right? And that is pretty interesting, right? I do find that pretty cool.
And I think I like it with NushuJuro as well. Not only because the fact that he's like an undead, he's a representation of an undead, is the ultimate sign of greed for somebody in charge of finances. That even as an undead, you're in charge of money, right?
No, but I mean but
he's crazy impressive in that chapter also. Like
and I think what's the most he's so impressive for sure. Well, it's the most noteworthy. He's giving us the names of the representations of what they're supposed to look like. It doesn't say yokai fruit, model Gyuki, model Itsumare, model Bakut, you know what I mean? And technically it shouldn't, right? Because again, the sandworm isn't even really a like mythological creature. It's a creature made out of fantasy, right? That novels, video games, and movies use as have used and created, but the fact that there's no name, makes me think that this is just a representation. This is what they look like, right? We could get into as well, like what we researched a bit about each mythological creature as well.
Honestly, I think the only one that was like a bit hard to like try to find something on was Saint Topman Workery as the Hoki.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
It's just it felt like that boar. Like the first thing that I thought when I saw the boars, like in terms of what what reminds me of it would be like in Hercules' trials more. Which is not even related at all to that. If you think about it.
Yeah, because when we looked for Hoki, we couldn't find anything like directly named a Hoki that was actually Chinese mythology, like portrayed at the end of the chapter, right?
And honestly, if any of you guys have any resources that are listening, like about it, please put it in the comments, because we'd be really interested, like to read about it. Maybe we just didn't type it the right way, because that was like a hard one. We were trying to find,
we found different other mythological Chinese, boars or pigs that could be representations of it. Like the broom, it's a legendary monster in like Chinese mythology, and it's like a huge boar that who's very strong, right? Like it's there aren't a lot of representations of that. I mean, there is also the Zubaji. It's called a pigsy. It's not really a boar. It was like one of the companions. It was one of the companions to Xuanzang in a journey to the west. So there's that as well. And I think what could make the most sense out of the things we've researched is, the demon boar in the labors of Yamato, which is a Japanese tale. And I mean, it could, link to what Oda is trying to tell us, in the cover art. We're seeing the tales of Yamato currently, right? Like what Yamato is going to be doing in Wano. So maybe there's a link there, that's possible. And again, the demon boar, it links back to, what we were saying in our theory about them being demons. But yeah, that could be possible. But again, like the actual Hoki itself, we couldn't find any actual, Chinese mythological creature called that. I know that we talked about the broom, the legendary monster, in Chinese mythology. Broom is, I think, a loose translation of Hoki as well. So that's possible. I think that, what was interesting was also NushuJuro, who's also, a yokai. Right, and he's like you said, a skeletal horse, right, from the underworld. And we saw that, in the chapter when he was taking out those pacifistas, that he used like freezing sword strikes on them or something like that. They was freezing the circuits. And it's pretty interesting, like you said, right, the whole skeletal undead thing. Not only what you said, but the fact that it's a representation of the undead, the underworld again, right, demons, Satan, all that. But also, it's reminiscent. Before we've seen cold strikes like this before, like with Brook, with his attacks, saying, it's the ice from hell, right, or whatever he says, right? Like, so there is, and we do see a lot of flames around where they're summoned, right, which is again reminiscent of hell and all that, and how it's described in in Christian mythology, right? So I just find all this very interesting. Itsumade is a very cool creature from Japanese folklore who kind of, you know, is depicted as having a humanoid face sometimes. So that could, you know, lead us into what his hybrid form could be. And I think, yeah, well, I'll slide an image here while I'm editing of the image of what I'm going to refer to. But Tao En in Shaman King, his dragon form just has like this face on it, you know? Kind of like if you guys saw Oda's SBS on, someone asked him what would Ivankov had looked like if he had eaten the dragon fruit, you know, that Big Mom stole from him. Oda just drew Kaido's dragon with Ivankov's giant head on it. You could maybe expect something like that for Mars's hybrid form. That could be definitely possible.
I mean, there's one last thing we haven't talked about in this chapter.
NushuJuro!
Well, NushuJuro, obviously you've already talked about, you know, his strikes and, you know, how impressive he is, but I think
The speed,
we're
man.
forgetting about another...
The speed!
The speed, obviously.
Dude, he
the
took
speed,
out
obviously.
those pacifistas like in 2 panels. He did the he did the whole island in like a few, well, maybe not the whole island, but right, all the pacifistas on the coast were like down in like 2 or 3 panels. That was crazy. And he didn't waste any resources, right?
That is true. He kept them for when get them back to function once, you know, Bonnie's not a threat anymore.
Yeah, they do mention Bonnie here as well, which, you know, we discussed she would be a high priority, you know, target for the world government.
She has the most priority on pacifistas. That's just like they need to make sure she's not in the picture. But I mean, we can talk about one swordsman's to the next one. I mean, we get the conclusion of the Lucci Zoro fight. I mean, not a surprising end. That was my first thought. It's like Zoro always finishes fights the same way. Opponent goes for his attack. He goes with his counter move and finishing them off. The part that's a bit, you know, interesting is the fact that it seems like he was not struggling, but they were pretty even until like Sanji made a remark, and then it just kind of triggers him.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was thinking that the reason why it was taking so long would be maybe the Conqueror's Haki. Like, it looks like he was using it more and more, and I'm thinking maybe he was just, you know, practicing with it and never realized that there was, while he was practicing, forgot that, you know, there was a bit of urgency to the situation and he couldn't mess around. And Sanji really got to remind him of that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just he felt it felt off, kind of, in a way. Like, but like you said, it was interesting that Sanji was the trigger, because there was some truth to what Sanji said, right? And Zoro knew it. And it was like, it wasn't like usual where, I don't know, Zoro gets like super upset. What did you say? Like, you know what I mean? He actually was like, he heard it and he was like, ah, damn, like he's right. Damn it, I gotta end this, right? And then he just, you know, and maybe it's also, again, what you were saying with the Conqueror's Haki, maybe he didn't want to end up useless like he was against King at the end, where, you know, there was the, you know, the drawbacks from the fake sensu being there, but still, like, maybe he didn't want to end up, you know, as injured, as incapacitated as he did before. And so that's why the fight maybe took as long as it did, right?
Well, he didn't know that somebody was gonna pick him up either.
Yeah, no, he didn't know that.
When he was fighting.
I mean,
so he had to. He needed the ability to walk back.
Yeah, yeah. We talked about it when we discussed the chapter. In any case, even if Sanji didn't give Zoro that wake-up call, Jinbei was right nearby. Like, he would have helped him finish the bad fight quicker or just intervene. Like, obviously, I do think Zoro could have defeated him without any help regardless. Even with Sanji, you know, giving Zoro the motivation, not the motivation, but the kick in the butt he needed. Eventually, I think Zoro would have defeated Lucci. I think they're on par, but Zoro is a bit above. I think that's fair to say.
I think they were even. I think they were even, but at the end of the fight, Zoro became much stronger. Because I do believe he has a better mastery over Conqueror's Haki thanks to that fight, and that will push him to the next level.
Yeah, Lucci's a strong enough opponent to push Zoro to use it in the most efficient way, I think. Rather than letting it, you know, rage out of his swords uncontrollably, like.
Exactly.
But I think another discussion right now is we got two swordsmen, right, in this chapter that are, you know, portrayed as, you know, doing some crazy stuff. What do you think about, you know, Zoro versus ZoroJuro versus NushuJuro? Like, do you think Zoro is even close right now? Because it seemed to me that like NushuJuro is like crazy powerful.
I would, like, if it would be unrealistic to just assume that Zoro's on his level at this point.
Yeah.
Just because of his background, the lore we saw, I think there's still like, he still has room.
Yeah, and it
to
seemed like he
improve on
was
Zoro.
casually taking out those packs. It wasn't like, it was effortless. I don't
I
think
mean, with
Zoro
enough
could like
precision.
rush around the island and you know, one-shot pacifistas. Like,
But that's not his thing either. That's
yeah,
not what he's
for sure.
you know, good at.
Definitely. And there is like a sort of imagery that you can build up between Zoro and NushuJuro. Now, not just the fact that, you know, NushuJuro most likely has the Ida Ikitetsu and Zoro has the third. Not only that, but the fact that, you know, when Zoro was on the brink of death, he saw that, you know, skeletal figure, right? You know, death coming to him. And you've got,
That's
you know,
true, that's true, I didn't think
NushuJuro,
about
who's
it.
got a skeletal form as well. So that could be something that Oda's, again, he likes making those, you know, tie-ins, you know. So it could be possible as well. But yeah, NushuJuro versus Zoro, I think at this point right now in the story, until Zoro gets his black blades, which we're assuming, you know, that black blades are linked to Kakurasaki coding, right? That seems like the most likely answer. Like if Zoro gets the black blades and he pushes his swords, you know, to the next level, because I think he's pushed himself to a very strong level right now. All he needs is to push his swords a bit further, I think. And then he'll be at that, you know, Riley, Oden level, you know what I mean? Mihawk.
Man, that's the goal, right?
Yeah. I think Mihawk's definitely the goal. Not maybe.
I mean, I think we probably should talk also about what the end of the chapter, where as we get that giant sandworm trying to eat Luffy, Dory and Groggy just kind of, you know, just separated into three pieces, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's three clean pieces,
I mean,
like a sushi, right? Like,
but
and Luffy's popping
I'm
out of
not
the
too
sushi.
concerned. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's impressive though that they can do that. Like that shows how strong they are. But I don't think we should be concerned for that elder. I think he's gonna be fine. Looking from the region, like what we saw from Saturn, I don't think that's gonna be, you know, one member down.
No, not at all. Like if we're on the right track about them, you know, being demons, and even yokai in mythology are described as having otherworldly features, right, to them. So them having super hyper infinite regeneration, you know, seems very likely as well. Especially with the, you know, similarities in their appearance, right? They have, you know, all of them have the black clouds, you know, they all have similar eyes as well. Like, again, they are linked. It's just we don't really necessarily know what that link is until we see, you know, the names of the fruits. Yeah, I mean,
if they're fruits.
And that's another point too. We had discussed this and we decided not to discuss this in the theory video because it wasn't relevant, right? We were talking about this, like, fruits for the seven princes, right? But it's possible that the Gorosei and, you know, Emu and possibly Garling, you know, don't have devil fruits. That's not what they are. Maybe they're just literally possessed by the demons that, you know, are supposed to represent each devil fruit. Like, again, like this sort of like infinite regeneration, no drawbacks, seemingly. Like, that's kind of crazy, and it kind of leads us to believe that maybe they're not devil fruits. And that would be even worse because maybe they don't have the weakness to the water. That would be crazy.
You can't use sea prism stone to get an advantage on them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and on top of that, again, there's the whole thing of we don't see the devil fruits reveal, right? Maybe that's intentional. Maybe they're not devil fruit users. That they just, you know, are actual representations, like they're possessed, or they are what these creatures were, right? Like, we know that dragons existed in the past as well in One Piece. Right? Like, these creatures could have existed. They could be those creatures that have just, instead of, you know, are humans that ate fruits that turned them into these creatures, they're creatures who, you know, took the forms of humans.
I mean, that's what demons do.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And like we said in our, you know, our theory video as well, it could just be a representation, and what they actually are is like what we discussed, like demon kings or the seven princes of hell or whatever he decides to do. Because I mean, in anime, manga, fiction, whatever, if you're doing a representations of like the biggest demons, like the king of demons and all that, it's not always, you know, how it's depicted in mythology with like Leviathan and
Belphegor.
Leviathan, Belphegor, all that. Like, take Black Clover or like we discussed, like Blue Exorcist or stuff like that, or even Full Metal. Like they change the names around. They'll take different demons for different roles. You know what I mean? So everything is interchangeable, especially with fiction. So it's interesting. We'll be interested to see how Oda, you know, decides to handle this. But we still believe that they're actually,
goes into.
Yeah, exactly. But we still believe that they're demons. Like, I think that's the idea, especially with the summoning circles, like, which is more of a Western, I think, anyways, you know, part of, you know, Satanism and stuff like that, more than something that's linked to the yokai specifically, from what I believe, from what we've researched as well. Like, another thing we didn't talk about real quick was, you know, how powerful Vegapunk's technology actually is, right? Mars did not scratch that force field at all with his, you know, fireball thing. So, I mean, you know, Vegapunk is still as impressive to this day.
I mean, that's why they summoned all 5 of them.
Yeah.
They could have just sent an extra one. They just sent everybody.
Yeah, they needed to make sure that they were going to stop Vegapunk from revealing what he was going to reveal, and that they were the only ones able to get there. You know, I mean, another thing we could discuss is you know, the message, right, that Vegapunk is going to reveal to the world, right? Like, we do see at the beginning of the chapter him, you know, stalling for time for his 10 minutes, right? It's like explaining something at it. I don't remember, but it was pretty funny. Yeah, he was like Vega coffee or something like that. Yeah, just a drop of it, you could transform a mug of warm water into a delicious brew. It's like doing advertising for his tech, you know, like while doing a big reveal to the world, like so casually.
Very American of him to put commercials before the big announcement.
But yeah, for sure. But I think with what he's saying, with how casual it seems he's talking about it, I don't think they're going to succeed in stopping him. Or they might be a bit late. They might succeed, but be a bit late, and he'll spill something. I could see Oda just cutting, you know, right before he says something like too crazy.
He can go either way at this point because he's getting toward the end of it, and he said it himself.
That's true.
So he could launch like a cascade of events from what he says, basically.
Whatever he says, it's going to be cascading.
I mean, for example, if he
effects.
reveals the truth about the world, you might have more rebellions starting to show up.
Yeah. I mean, for next chapter, what are you expecting? I think that, you know, it's going to be a continuation of this fight, right? Like, and
for sure, I think
the giant robot, like,
I was gonna say probably it's like the next chapter or the chapter after that. I think we'll see the giant robot that will allow them to escape some way somehow.
Yeah, and it's another thing that's from 800 years ago, right? There's a lot of things from 800 years ago that are on Egghead right now. As Vegapunk said, like, you know, at the beginning of Egghead, I think it was maybe it wasn't Vegapunk, it was Shaka. He told like the crew, he was like, would you believe that an island like this existed 800 years ago? So you've already got the location, which is reminiscent of what was 800 years ago. You've got the Gorosei members with their crazy demon fruits, crazy demon yokai, whatever fruits. You've got Luffy with Gear 5, and you'll have the, you know, the giant robot. So there'll be a lot of things from 800 years ago coalescing in like one big area, right? One big climactic event.
It could be the reveal too that Vegapunk has is the
and
history
the reveal
of 800 years
also
ago.
linked to 800 years ago. Yeah, for sure. So maybe we'll have a chapter that's actually called 800 years ago or something like that. Because of
That could be a
everything.
good flashback.
It could be a interesting flashback or a tease to one, like we saw with God Valley, right? But yeah, overall, I think that this was a cool chapter. The forms look amazing. Still
Terrifying.
Still
Absolutely terrifying.
Terrifying, yeah, for sure. Like Big Mom levels of terrifying. Especially
you
NushuJuro,
understand
man.
that those guys are evil. Like,
yeah, that's
they get the point across. But I can't wait.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait, and it's just like the part that's fascinating about what's going on right now is like we can see the end. Like for a long time, you know, sometimes with One Piece you could be like asking for more, and I feel like there's still more questions, but we're getting closer to the answers.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to slow down a bit. Where's the backstory to pump the brakes a bit? Oh, we just got Kuma's.
Well, we just got a huge backstory before that. I mean, come on. Thanks for watching our discussion video on chapter 1110 of One Piece. If you want to learn more about our theory about how the Gorosei, Imu, and Garden might be the 7 princes of hell, here's a link to that video. Have a nice day!
Peace out.